For those who have not had the experience of my writings before, or for those who have forgotten it, it can be rather like the making of a mosaic. Pieces inserted here and there, and not really until the end, and you step back and contemplate it all, will you really have known where I am taking you in this time with me. For some, it takes a few reads. For some, it takes a few years. For some, it takes something heard from someone else, suddenly remembered, light a path they can see. No one is in the same place at the same time or sees in the same way. Tyrone Tootoosis Sr., great-great-grandnephew of Poundmaker, Cree linguist, facilitator, actor, storyteller, historian, and archivist, an incredible horse breeder posted, and please note he has since passed away. Tansy and good morning. For a long time now, I've been pondering on Cree oral traditions and the at times subtle and at other times vast differences that exist between Cree people's way of communicating, conversation, interaction, relationships, and that of non-Indigenous nations. I think the late author Norma Sluman captured these differences when describing the relationships between Cree and Europeans in the 1880s. He must find a better way to talk to those whom he must deal with. There must be some way to a better understanding than had been found so far, and he must try to find it before the Governor-General of Canada came to visit the Northwest. He thought back over all the times he had talked and had watched his friends talk to white men. Again, he remembered the little pricks of resentment so often felt when he sensed white men were bored with the Indians' deliberate and leisurely way of speaking. He had known very well their attention wandered as the interpreters droned on, that they missed some of the meaning, sometimes the most important points amidst the symbolism and graceful metaphors of Indian custom. Apparently, white men preferred to hurry with their talks as they did with everything else. He wondered if he could do better with them by imitating their own speech pattern of brevity, of bluntness, and by coldly hammering at the straight facts of whatever point he would try to make. At first, the idea repelled him. Yet he came back to it again. To the white man, such an approach could not be rude or contemptuous, for they talked that way even to others whom they held in high regard. Probably they talked that way amongst themselves. He began practicing as he rode along, biting out swift, succinct sentences, amused and slightly dismayed at himself as he did so. I am not so succinct anymore, which explains why there are no easy chapter breaks here in Cede 2.0. No such suggestions of where you might pause or how to nicely group concepts and subjects in what I am sharing. This is a start off with a full pot of coffee or tea and tap on the do not disturb on the smartphone exercise. There is no table of contents to tell you how to see or think about or experience what you are reading. This is not sectioned into 18-minute maximum presentation chunks, well rehearsed, edited, and directed like TED Talks requires, because research shows that is the limit of the human attention span. That may well be the limit for today's non-Indigenous people and some Indigenous people, but before contact, that was never the case for Indigenous people. I have always been so impressed with the elders, with their high intellectual capacity, stamina, and endurance, and thankful for their having schooled me in that way. While I shared the following on March 18, 2015 on Facebook, saying that was all I had to say, I had obviously reconsidered. So what follows below my Facebook succinctness provides the details that may help those who find themselves having to deal with an FNLMA regime initiative active in their communities. Because from the sounds of those who have contacted me, they are not getting much independent help, just promotion, and when questions are asked, responses Senator Sibiston would be proud to hear, quote, "Wow, whatever happened to Mount Currie, Lillooet? Land Code Initiative, that's what. First time anyone to my knowledge has ever put something in writing to attempt to refute any part of my 1999 paper, Appleseed, so I got a little excited. But instead of something I could get my teeth into, it is a piece of defamation. How disappointing. Looks like it has been up on their website since last year, but rarely do I vanity search to check for any improper use of my words. This is not a waiver, people. I cannot share the defamatory words because that would be me republishing the defamation, but perhaps telling is to simply compare my analysis with their personal attacks. Come on, Lillooet, your people deserve better than that. Invite me up. We can talk it in an adult way. This is a serious matter for decision by your people. Not my business, by the way, what they decide. No vested interest on my part. And they deserve to be dealing with opinions. That's that fully informed part of the consent needed for the surrender anyhow. If you want their decision to prove binding in the long term, should they decide to approve the land code. Surely you do not want on the record anything that might in the future give rise to allegations of lack of full information. The don't listen to her because she's this and that, doing this and that approach does not, in my respectful opinion, meet the standard. Never met you Lillooet land code guys, so how do you know what I'm thinking? What motivates me? Let your people see me then. They can decide for themselves what I'm about, dark or light, dull or bright, messenger or mischief maker, after hearing our discussion and asking me whatever they would like. If there is so much talk about apple seed that you included a so-called section in your update, then that's the way to clear it up. Think for a bit. It is not me getting the benefit of surrendered reserves. It's the Crown. And it is not me being handed over power to decide how your land is used, subject to only very broad brushes of land use categories in a land code, and how the deals will be structured and where, and to whom benefits will flow. That's the Band Council et al. And it will not be me offering any check and balance like I did as part of my responsibilities under the fiduciary duty as Crown lawyer. And where is your check and balance after handing over so much power after passing a land code? Who are you going to call? Know that BC lawyers can only accept instructions for band matters from Chief and Council, not like what happens with the Crown. That's a whole lot of faith in people. Me as a lawyer, I like the checks and balances, but that's just me and this is not my business. Legacy for future generations. Remember, why else can a band council proceed with development without having to run a surrender for, e.g., leasing for each deal through the feds? Because the surrender to the Crown, as per dating back to the Royal Proclamation 1763, is how the Crown must govern herself, has already happened once a land code is passed, assuming compliance with the FNLMA. There are two ways to do it these days: surrender either through the Indian Act provisions and processes or through the First Nation Land Management Act, FNLMA provisions and processes. Just because you choose one avenue over the other does not change the resulting legal realities. Senior Department of Justice legal counsel understand, of course, what surrendered reserves via the FNLMA are and how that comes to be. If they had disagreed with me, I would have disclosed that. I have integrity. Oh, has anyone seen a Crown lawyer opinion on any of this? Are DOJ Crown lawyers showing up to explain the land code to the people? Are they providing opinions to the people that this will not result in a surrendered reserve? If so, do tell. In the meantime, I am not holding my breath. If I get around to it early next year, perhaps I will put out an update and make it a little more user-friendly. I do not really have time to respond to the requests that are coming in a lot lately, but I share this. Some tweaking and clarifying the individual agreement does not change the basic premise of what is being done. Instead of piecemeal surrender of bits of the reserves, this gets in place a full surrender of all the reserves, with some things to then be done when actual development is decided, without the checks and balances accorded from having a fiduciary bound to ensure that all development is in the best interest of the band as a whole and best use of that land. Crown duty is done once the full surrender under the FNLMA elected by passing the land code. The fiduciary duty is limited to ensuring the process is followed as set out in the FNLMA. No more economic analysis. But bottom line, if this land code, FNLMA regime, is such a good thing, who cares what some white lawyer thinks? A woman yet, for those who prefer the patriarchal ways introduced to them. Surely there must be a bunch of communities by now with all manner of improvements regarding racism, poverty, suicide, education, substance abuse, work, income, housing, respect from the outside to look at. Where are those voices of those who are living with it? What wonders have befallen these people? Did the almighty Savior the land code deliver? I'm not hearing it or seeing it, but who cares what I see and hear? I'm getting on anyway, and yes, Mum, I am getting a lot of gray hair. Let the people hear and see for themselves, and that's all I have to say. Lillooet people had since contacted me to advise that the land code had been rejected. Maybe the reason we are not hearing those voices of those who are living with the FNLMA is reflected in a Creole proverb from Martinique, and I'll speak it only in English. The chickens don't brag about their own soup, of course referring to the chickens in the chicken soup.